Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are EBS, your experienced technology partner. We specialize in the deployment of Sage Business Management and Microsoft solutions, managed services, and secure on-premises and cloud-based infrastructure. We are now in our 45th year. My name is Darren Tolley, and I am one of the account managers here at EBS. Today, we are joined by Draycir, who we've partnered with for many, many years. Draycir are a Sage ISV, independent solutions vendor, and provide a wide range of innovative solutions for Sage 200. And many of you will already be utilizing Spindle Document Management. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Ross Barker, who will give us an overview of Draycir's automated document capture solution, which is fully integrated with Sage 200. We are recording today's presentation and will make this available to you in the next few days. There are lots of recordings on our YouTube channel. Remember to hit subscribe to receive notifications when we load new videos. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, or there will be an opportunity at the end of the presentation in the Q&A session. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Ross. Morning, Ross.
Morning, Darren. Morning, everybody, and I'll extend my thank you for your time this morning and for joining the session. I'm not one for death by PowerPoint, but I do have a few slides to go through with you this morning, just by way of introduction. So without further ado, I'll rattle through them, and then we can have a look at the software that we've all joined the session to see this morning. So as Darren mentioned, I work for a company called Draycir, a long-standing partner of EBS. We don't quite reach the age of EBS, but we are 24 years old. And Spindle has been a product that has been around since day one. It's the foundation of our business. But of course, that has developed and evolved over time, as I'm sure you would all expect it to. Those of you that are either on the call or listening to this recording that are familiar with Spindle could probably just skip past the next couple of minutes. So very simply, it was a brief introduction to Draycir as a business, a long-standing partner of EBS, as Darren mentioned. We're 23 years old, and the foundation of our business is our document management piece. Originally started out as a document distribution only solution, distributing your invoices, statements, remittances, any other documentation as well, quite frankly. It then extended to include that capture element. It became then more of a rounded document management product many years ago, but we have a number of add-ons that also form part of that product. Most notably, Spindle Purchase Invoice Recognition, which is what we're here to have a look at this morning. We do have a number of other products within our stack. Although we're not here to look at these this morning, if there is any requirement for a one-to-one demonstration regards any of the Spindle document management suite or any of our additional products, Excel, Databridge, Credit Hound, or Pay Them, by all means, let Darren know, and I'd be happy to go through those with you. For those of you that already are using Spindle document management, again, I'll go through this very quickly. For those that aren't necessarily as familiar with Spindle document management as a base product, again, we can pick up on that potentially after the call. But Spindle document management is the foundation of what we're here to see. And as I mentioned, it's the ability to distribute those documents, but also capture those documents coming in, including those purchase invoices. Now, you can do that manually, of course, but we do have that OCR extension. Many benefits to Spindle document management, a few that you can see on the screen in front of you now. In terms of Spindle document management, yes, we have the ability to distribute, we have the ability to scan, we have the ability to use our OCR piece to assist in that process. But because that document management piece is included, it gives you the ability to view all of those documents back against those purchase orders or supplier accounts in Sage 200. You'd also then have access to the document search tool. So any documentation that you're distributing, capturing, that we are automatically recognizing through the OCR engine is all visible to you in that central repository against the customer account, the supplier account, and you can search by documentation as well. Spindle Purchase Invoice Recognition is developed with Iris, who are a Canon company. So it's a very much an enterprise solution, but targeted more at the SME market, which does essentially mean you're getting a real bang for your buck. As I mentioned, we can capture those purchase invoices manually, but having the solution in place reduces the need for that manual input, because the software is essentially reading those invoices and it will look to post and archive those invoices. Whether it does that against the purchase order or not, it really doesn't matter. We do offer 2- and 3-way matching, so matching against that purchase order at line level and GRN, and we can also include expected received quantities and tolerances within there as well. Spindle Purchase Invoice Recognition, a typical process flow for the product itself. Purchase invoice is received, whether that's received into your kind of group email inbox and you drag the document into the portal, or we can have an email forwarding rule configured so it drops straight into the document portal. I'll show you both of those options in a few minutes' time. The document is essentially then processed by the software, read by the software, and the information interpreted within it. It will then let you know, and there's a number of different statuses, again, which we'll cover in a moment, but it will let you know whether there is any verification required. If it's picked up any discrepancy of any kind, is it a duplicate? Is there a requirement for it to be sent for approval? If any of those are hit or aren't hit, the software can then complete the job by posting and archiving that invoice against that purchase order or against that supplier account within Sage 200, as we touched on a moment ago. Spindle Approvals is our free approvals tool that sits within the invoice recognition suite. And so if you do have any approval workflows in place, it could be something as simple as all invoices from supplier A or all invoices that are worth £10,000 or more. There are a number of criteria that can be configured for those approval rules. Effectively, if the invoice is read by the software, it hits one of the approval tools. An email will then be sent to Darren, to Ross, to whoever the approver is, notifying them that there is an invoice that needs their approval. We can then log into the approvals tool. We can see that information. We can see a copy of the invoice in question. We can see all of that information from the purchase order or not, and then we can make our decision whether we wish to approve that or not. If we reject it, again, the status is updated in the portal. If we do approve it, the status is updated to say that it's been posted and archived, and you'd then be able to see a copy of that invoice within Sage 200 as well, against that supplier account or purchase order. So it all flows through right from receiving that document. And I'm pleased to say that is the end of my slide deck. As I mentioned, I'm not one for death by PowerPoint. If you do require any literature after this, by all means, reach out to Darren and we'd be happy to drop some information through to you. But let's have a look at the software in question. So if I just bring up an email very, very quickly. Now, you might be thinking, what on earth is he doing? Answering emails on demonstration. Actually, this is an example of another route to get your purchase invoices or supplier invoices directly into the portal. As I mentioned very briefly there, you can drag and drop those documents into the portal once they've been received by email. But if you wanted to provide your customers with a dedicated email address, you essentially wouldn't have to touch the document. It would flow directly into the portal and the software could read that. You might want to put the reins on that a little bit, but again, it's really just an option for you should you want it or not. But I'll draw your attention very, very quickly to the attachment. If you could see there, it's number 7 and HBN 001 by title. So I'm just going to send this email off now. And again, it'll become evident why I've done that within a few minutes, hopefully. So first things first, if we just jump into my demonstration environment, just to give you a very brief view of what that document management piece looks like. Just because anybody that's on the call this morning that isn't as familiar with document management would at least get to see where those documents are archived, whether it's against the sales order, the purchase order, the customer account, the supplier account. Now, here's an order that I put on the system just before we jumped online. And for those of you that do use Spindle, these controls here will be very familiar to you. These are the document management controls where I can capture a number of different file types, but I can also view those documents that already have been archived. So as I was talking through that Spindle document distribution piece, the Spindle document management piece, the ability to archive those documents as you go and view them within Sage 200, here is an example of it. And again, here are those documents that I've archived from this morning, a purchase order that I captured, a sales order acknowledgement that I sent out, and then I've got a picking list and a proof of delivery. And of course, I can capture as many documents in there as I need to. So just to give you a brief view of that for those that aren't as familiar with Spindle document management. But if I was to just open up the document portal, because ultimately this is what we want to do. We want to capture that purchase invoice, that supplier invoice that's come into the business. Now, 9 times out of 10, the customers that I speak to are receiving their emails by email. That might be the case for some of you on the call. You might still get them in hard copy, whether that be frequently or very, very occasionally. If you are receiving them in hard copy, don't worry. We can still scan them into the portal. There's not a problem there. But if I run with the majority, or what I assume would be the majority, I have potentially received a couple of invoices this morning from my supplier. Dear accounts, please find attached our invoice for your reference. All you would have to do moving forward, having once implemented Spindle Purchase Invoice Recognition, is just simply drag that document into the portal like so. And once it's in the portal, I then simply click Recognize. Now, I've dragged that from an email. Everybody works in very different ways. I might actually prefer to have those invoices as they've been received stored locally or to my desktop if I'm processing them at a certain time of the week. If that was the case, I could just drag that invoice in from a file location. So it doesn't need to be from an email. As I say, there are a number of ways we can capture this, whether it's a hard copy and we want to scan it in, whether it's directly from an attachment of an email, whether it's from a file location such as that we've just grabbed that document from, or alternatively, whether we've set up that email forwarding rule. So what we're hopefully being able to achieve there is all aspects of how you might receive your purchase invoices. Once I've clicked Recognize, you'll have noticed that those 2 documents have now left the document capture screen and they are now being read by the software. So that's that point of that invoice recognition process map that you'd have seen a few minutes ago. So if I just click into the recognition tab in the top right hand corner, you'll then see we've got what is effectively my to-do list. These are those invoices that need my verification, have let me know that they've already been posted and archived, let me know if it's a duplicate or if it's been sent for approval. There are a number of status updates that you can see in here. If an approval request has been rejected, for example, we would also see that within the portal as well. Request rejected here as well, for example. Now you have them all date and time stamped, so you can see when those documents have been received and read by the software. It will give you that relevant status update and you'll see who it was uploaded by. I'm logged in as admin this morning, so that's me here, those 2 documents I've just uploaded. But you'll also notice we've got an email address here, and that's the invoice that I emailed through just upon sharing my screen. So it's an example of how, if you've provided that email address to your suppliers, could be invoices at, for example, then you wouldn't have even had to drag it from the email that you've received into your group accounts inbox, for example. You would just simply be able to see that that's from customer 1, customer 2, customer 3, because you've received that email directly. And just to show you there's no smoke and mirrors, if you recall, the attachment was number 7, HBN 001. Now, I'm just going to draw your attention to a couple of other invoices. So, and I'll process these in a live setting. So I've got 2 examples here, both from the same supplier. I'll draw your attention to the number 23 and 24, as you can see here. Now, one of these invoices is worth £200. One of these invoices is worth £400, as we can see there, hopefully. Now, I'm just going to capture these invoices so we can see them being processed in a live setting. So I'm just going to grab them from a file location. As we've already said, we could have captured them from an email that's been received, or they may well have automatically been emailed into the portal. Now, upon receiving them, I'm going to click Recognize. I'm going to skip through to the next screen now so we can see those status updates changing as we go. You'll see they're both currently queued. And these statuses will now change as the software is processing them. You'll see now, look, the software is analyzing that first invoice for us. And we've also got the second one that's just about to be analyzed as well. I'm expecting two different things to happen here. I'm expecting one of those invoices to post and archive directly to Sage 200, and then that document will be visible to us this morning. I'm expecting one of them to be sent for approval, and right on cue, we've got that invoice there, as you can see. Now, if you have got an approval workflow in place of any kind, again, the approver will have been notified that there is an invoice that's awaiting their approval. I can log in using the mobile app, or I can use the desktop site to view that document. Now, that invoice that's just posting will appear against my supplier account in Sage 200, but we'll have a look at the one that's sent for approval first, as you can see here. So if I just open up my approvals tool, the first screen that you see here very much replicates that mobile app. So it's more of a carousel view where I can scroll and swipe past the screen. I'll look at it through the desktop view this morning, though, so it's certainly easy for us all to see on the call this morning. Now, mine defaults to pending, but there are a number of different statuses here, from approved, pending, rejected, as you would expect. Works on a simple traffic light system. Those that have been green, those that have been approved are green, rather. Those rejected are red, and those pending are amber. Now, you might be thinking, Ross, get your backside in gear. You've got plenty of invoices that need approval here. Now, if that was the case in real terms, you can still export that information. So if it was getting towards the end of the week, the end of the month, and you wanted to see how many invoices that I still hadn't approved, select the necessary date range, select the approver or approvers, and you can export that information. So whether it's a friendly nudge or it's just a case of dropping through to investigate why they've still not been approved, again, you've got that information at your fingertips, and of course useful if you're doing your accruals. You can see here that top invoice that needs my approval. I can search for anything I need to, by the way, but I don't need to. This is the one that we're looking at this morning from the 9th of October, as you can see at 11:17. Now, if I click into that invoice, that's going to provide me with all of the information that the software has read from that document, from the supplier name, the company code, the gross amount, the net amount, the invoice date, VAT amount, supplier references, etc. Now, this is an invoice that doesn't carry a PO. So the software is going to look to match the information within the invoice, determine who the supplier is, and then post that invoice against the default nominal for that supplier. I can edit that if I want to. So if I wanted to apportion some of that value elsewhere, I can do. I can reject that approval request, or I can approve it. You'll see that we've got an audit history on the right-hand side as well. So a date and timestamp of not only the software's interaction with that invoice, but also mine. You can see when I viewed it. I can also see a copy of that invoice as well. So there's that invoice, the one that we saw a few minutes ago from Kitchen Builders for £400. If I'm rejecting the invoice, I do need to leave a reason why. If I'm approving it, I don't need to leave a reason why. I could just say all okay, or I could simply click approve. Leave as many notes in there as you want to. But once that's approved, you'll then see that the audit history is updated on the right-hand side. So it's got that updated date and timestamp of activity with that invoice in question. And that one is now all dealt with and approved. So the process for that invoice was that I'd received it by email. I dragged it into the portal. The software read it. It was an invoice without a PO, but it hit an approval workflow. We had the notification that it was sent for approval. I, in this case, had received an email to say, Ross, there's an invoice awaiting your approval. I've simply logged into the approvals tool and seen that invoice, analysed the information and made my decision whether I want to approve or reject it. Back in the portal, you'll see that that sent for approval status has now changed to posted and archived, along with the other invoice that we had nothing else to do with other than drag it into the portal and click recognise. Now, if I was to jump back into Sage 200 and just have a very quick look against my supplier list, and it was Kitchen Builders, wasn't it? May just take a second. My Sage is operating a little bit slower this morning. And you'll see we've got both of those invoices, one for £400, one for £200, and we've got a copy of the invoice for you to view against that supplier account within Sage 200. And it's the same document management controls that I briefly showed you before. And there's a copy of that invoice, in this case, for £400. So it's as straightforward as that. Darren, were there any questions so far at all with regards to that process that has come through on the chat, or are we okay to continue and have a look at maybe an invoice with a PO by way of example?
Yeah, yeah. There's one question about what licenses are needed to make this work, which
sure. So if you've got Spindle already, for those of you on the call that have already got Spindle document management, you would just need the invoice recognition module license, which essentially is this tab here, and that opens up the ability for you to view all of those invoices that have been read by the software. You would then very simply buy a document bundle. So whether you're processing 50 invoices a month or 500 invoices a month or 5,000, you'd buy the relevant document bundle, and very simply you just chip away at that. So if I put 5 invoices through this morning off a 5,000 document bundle, 4,995 left, and so on and so forth. Those document bundles don't expire, so you may choose to buy a much larger bundle. The more you purchase, the cheaper it becomes, knowing that actually it really doesn't matter. We will eventually get through that, and I think it will be in 18 months or 2 years or whenever it might be. Just while I'm doing that little bit of housekeeping, it's important to say that our documents are treated as such. And by that, I mean an invoice is treated as a document off your counter. It's not treated as, let's say that invoice has got 2, 3 or 4 pages to it. That wouldn't be treated as 4 documents off your counter. Because if that was the case, you'd obviously rapidly get through your bundle and have to purchase one much sooner. So that wouldn't be the case with our solution. So as I say, another benefit there, along with the free approvals tool. You don't pay anything for the approvals tool that we've just been through a moment ago. For those of you that aren't using Spindle document management, you would need at least 1 Spindle document management license, because ultimately you are capturing those documents. So you would need that Spindle document management license. Any other questions so far at all, Darren, or was that it for the moment?
That's it just for now.
For now. Perfect. So so we've looked at a couple of invoices that didn't carry a PO. We'll have a look at an invoice now with a purchase order, and you'll notice here that I've got those status updates for the invoices that we've just processed. I could now delete these, by the way, and I'm not deleting them from existence. They're actually just being deleted from the invoice recognition module, and of course we already know they've been archived. We've seen them in Sage 200 against the supplier account. And if you recall a few minutes ago, I kind of said think of this a little bit like a to-do list. These are the invoices that have either already been processed, so you know it's been done, or that you need to verify, or it's got some form of action against it for you. So if we just pick one of these that I know has got a purchase order against it, in this case we'll go with this invoice here, so number 14. Now, if an invoice does have a verification required status, there are a number of reasons why that might be there. The software's picked up something obviously that it wants you to verify. Now, that could be a discrepancy of some kind. It's picked up something it doesn't like the look of. It might simply not be matching against the purchase order in this case. There could be some incorrect information in there against the supplier name, supplier details. So it may well have picked up something it wants you to verify. Alternatively, it may be what we refer to as a manual trigger. And you might have put a manual trigger on that particular invoice, supplier, nominal, for you to verify. You want to verify any invoice that comes through is read by the software against that supplier or against that nominal, for example. The distinction between the two is either a red warning box or a green trigger box, which essentially is the one that you've added manually. So let's have a look at one of these invoices that needs our verification. Select the invoice in question and very simply click verify in the bottom right hand corner. That will open up the invoice in what we quite simply called Web Verify, gives you the ability to analyze that invoice and the information within it. And because there's quite a large amount of information in there, it breaks that invoice down into 6 key tabs. Your header, line item and footer tabs, as you can see here, along with those analysis tabs, VAT, project and nominal analysis tabs. Now remember, we're on the lookout for any red or green boxes. The red boxes are the warning triggers, the ones that the software has picked up something it doesn't like the look of or that doesn't match. The green ones are those manual triggers, something that you actively want to verify, whether it's for this supplier or nominal, for example. Now, the information on the right-hand side is the information that, of course, you would normally have to manually key into Sage every time you received an invoice from, in this case, Donaldson Extrusion. But the software has read all of that information. Now I can click into any one of these boxes and it will highlight on the invoice where it's read that information. Our software uses something called IDR, so it's looking across the whole document for that information, which does mean that when you implement invoice recognition, you don't need to train the software against every supplier invoice. Now, if you've got 500 suppliers, of course, that becomes a mammoth admin task at the beginning. With our solution, we're on the lookout for that invoice number, whether it's in the top right-hand corner, the top left, the bottom right, the bottom left, the middle, wherever it may be within that that document. And it's got a number of years worth of key terms that it's looking against. So whether that be invoice number, invoice NO, INV number, INV-NO, for example, because your suppliers will send you invoices in all different formats with different, kind of terminology in there potentially. So it's looking out for all of those different terms it may come across. Now, if I was to click into the supplier reference box very quickly, you'll notice that it's not actually highlighted anywhere on the invoice that says DON001. Now, your supplier doesn't know what their supplier reference is in your Sage dataset. But what the software is looking to do is match who the supplier is, and it will go through a hierarchy. A unique identifier such as the VAT number, of course, would be where it looks to start, because there is then no doubt who the supplier is, because whether there be a slight typo within the supplier name or the first line of the address is not in Sage 200, but it appears on the invoice in question, that would typically flag up an error for you to verify. In this case, although the supplier name, Donaldson's Extrusions, both with an S, differ to the invoice that's been sent through, whether that's typo or error within our input, we can see quite clearly that the VAT number references this particular supplier. So there is in no doubt who this supplier is and who the invoice has been sent through from. Of course, if I did need to edit that, I could update that information should I want to. Now, you might well have noticed that we've got multiple purchase orders on the same invoice here. So if that is a common occurrence for you, don't worry, it doesn't trip up the software. As you can see, we've got 2 purchase orders that appear on the same invoice here. But all looks okay. Remember, we're looking out for those red or green boxes. I can move through to my line item tab. Now, again, we're looking, or the software has read this information, matched it against that purchase order and GRN, that 2- and 3-way matching. Now, all looks okay to me from the quantities, the unit price, and the net amounts. In fact, if I was just to change one of these values, for example, to number 3, you'll see there's that red trigger. There's that warning. The software's picked up something it doesn't like the look of. And if that's ever the case, it will give you a reason why. In this case, you can see the quantity on the invoice is greater than the expected quantity. So rather than go through that investigation piece your side to see why those values don't match, the prices and the quantities don't match, the software has done that for you. You could very quickly now go back to your supplier and highlight to them that the invoice they've sent you is incorrect and doesn't match that PO. All looks okay though, so I'd be happy to proceed to my footer tab. In this case, you'll get a summary of the line item totals, net and gross amounts. As you can see, those values all match, so I would be happy to proceed. This is a standard VAT invoice. This invoice in question doesn't relate to anything with Sage Project Accounting. And then I've got my nominal analysis tab. And there you can see that green trigger. That's that manual verification that I've put on this invoice. And again, that could be for a number of reasons. You might want to allocate some of that cost to a different nominal code, for example. You can edit the narrative manually, or we can also have the software pre-populate that box with any information that it's read from the tabs we've already been through. I'll keep mine as straightforward as a purchase invoice and supplier reference name in there, but again, you could manually put whatever information you want to. If you're happy to proceed, very simply click return. Are you sure you want to process this invoice? Yes, I do. And that is as straightforward as processing an invoice with a purchase order that had a status of verification required. Now it will load up the next round of jobs. So any of those invoices that appeared in the portal that had that status of verification required, rather than me go back to the portal, have to click the invoice and then click verify again, I'm already in Web Verify. So I've got that list of invoices that I can very simply just work my way through if I wanted to. If we jump back into the document portal, you'll see that status is updating. That was verification required, of course. That status is now updating to posting, to archiving, as you can see now, and to posted and archived. And unsurprisingly, if I was to go back into Sage, although this time we'll have a look at that invoice against the purchase order specifically, we'll be able to see how that document has now archived against the purchase order specifically as well. So it was Donaldson's extrusion, wasn't it? And 3298, 3295. Remember the two purchase orders on the same invoice, and it's the same document management controls that we've been through already this morning. So the familiarity is there throughout throughout Sage for you. There's the number one, which indicates we've got the one document archived, and there is the document that we've archived at 11:32, so literally 1 minute ago. And that, in a nutshell, is Spindle Purchase Invoice Recognition with approvals. Any other questions that have come through at all, Darren?
Yeah, it's one more. So how quickly can this be deployed?
Well, very quickly. If you are an existing Spindle document management user already, we would like you to be on the latest version of the software, so a quick upgrade on that. But of course, dependent on whether that's already in place, is one less task to do. The process for installing, configuring, and training on the pieces is about 1.5 days. So that would allow us to get you up to speed with the software, configure it, and provide the dedicated training for that as well. The approvals tool that we went through obviously a few minutes ago, although we will provide training on this for you, is very, very easy to set up those approval workflows. And that might have sounded a little bit complex as we were going through those examples. But if I just draw your attention to my first rule, you can see that I've configured a rule here that very simply has two conditions to it. When the supplier reference is equal to, in this case, KIT001 for kitchen builders, and when the net amount was greater than 300, it's sent to me for approval. But I can add more conditions here. I can add as many conditions as I want to. So once you've been shown how to use the approvals tool, you'd be very much it'd be very easy for you to set these rules up yourself as and when they come through, or you want to add any more approval rules in place. Just to make a note, if you did have multiple approvers for the same invoice, you can then have the option to have all approvers must approve, or any one of them must approve. But it's, as I say, very, very easy to set up those new rules within the approvals piece as well.
Fabulous. Thanks for doing that, Ross.
Anything else at all?
I've got no other questions. Just throw it out to everyone out there. If you want to unmute yourself, if you have any questions. Must have been a really good demonstration, Ross.
Hopefully that's the case. And as we mentioned previously, if there is a requirement for a conversation specific to your process, understand it's a public demo, may not want to go into that detail on this call, just reach out to you, Darren. I'm sure you'll agree. We'll happily put a date and time in the diary and go through, any questions or another demo if required. But no, hopefully it was a useful session.
Absolutely. Yeah, so if you do want a one-to-one, we do this quite regularly with Ross. Just let me know, or let your account manager know at EBS. I think we can probably close up the session there. Thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you again soon.